This is a presentation from the Supernaut Network.
Welcome to the Imaginarium, the show where art, technology, and creativity intersect and combine to forge a conversation that can only be found in the Imaginarium. I'm your host, Scott Colbert, and joining me as usual is my co-host, the horror nerd himself, Todd Staruch. Hello, Todd. How are you today?
Hey, Scott, I'm doing great. How about you?
Well, all things considered, it's not too terrible a day. I understand you had some fun over the weekend, doing a little filming.
I did. I had a chance to participate in a project that some filmmaker friends of mine are working on. It's an anthology series made up of a whole bunch of fake movie trailers. So our segment, I play a bartender in a sleazy strip club where a killer is on the loose. And it was more fun than a person should legally be allowed to have.
So is this going to be a little bit of a new career for you, being in front of the camera rather than just reviewing and booking movies for Cafe Z?
Where the opportunities present themselves, it is a lot of fun. I always tell anyone who's ever thinking of just, signing up to be an extra even in a movie, to just go do it because it's a lot of fun. So where the opportunities present themselves, yeah, you'll probably see more of me in some indie films.
Tom Ryan, Jeremiah Kipp, take note, Todd's available. Our guest today isn't an extra in a movie, but Daniel Ramanos is an illusionist, a paranormal investigator and debunker, and president of the Dracula Society of Maryland, as well as an author. So, welcome, Daniel. Thank you for being on the Imaginarium.
Oh, well, thanks for having me.
Just so everybody knows that I am not perfect. This is actually the second time we did have to record this because I forgot to hit the record button because I'm an idiot. Daniel, let's talk about, you're an illusionist. What got you into illusions and being a magician?
That was really something that goes back to childhood, as long as I can remember, pretty much reading books on the subject and seeing various documentaries and TV shows about famous magicians, Houdini and others, and it was just something that fascinated me and something I always wanted to be a part of.
I myself am a big fan of, a sucker for a good magic act, a good mentalist of all kinds. Do you have a particular specialty? Are you a sleight of hand guy or more the big illusion type magician?
I've done various different, I suppose you would say, genres of magic, depending upon the venue, the size of the audience, and so forth. But I think my real specialty, or what I'm best known for, is a genre of magic called bizarre magic, which kind of blends together traditional stage illusion with a spoken word performance. And bizarre magicians often use like a narrative framework, like if they write original stories as I do, they could use one of those, or many use stories by writers like Edgar Allan Poe or H.P. Lovecraft and use that as a framework for the illusions present. And I've done that. And I also do the escape type acts, the Houdini type things, escape from handcuffs and chains, and the classic straitjacket escape and things of that sort as well.
Just as a follow-up, do you have a favorite artist who might have been your biggest influence?
Well, I would say Houdini, both as a magician and my interests in paranormal and even my work as a writer to a certain extent, because Houdini collaborated with H.P. Lovecraft on a story once, so he kind of touched in, to at least some extent, in various different things that I do. So I would say Houdini is probably my biggest influence as far as magic goes. And also Harry Blackstone. I remember when I was a kid, I got a book called The Blackstone Book of Magic and Illusion, which was actually by Harry Blackstone Jr., because there were two Blackstones. So he was my other big influence as far as magic is concerned.
Yeah, I remember seeing Harry Blackstone, I think it was probably Junior, on talk shows and whatnot. Some really, really good stuff. Do you think, like, magicians like Doug Henning and David Copperfield, and maybe, I guess to a certain extent, Siegfried and Roy, have brought magic to an audience that might otherwise not have been interested in it?
I think so. I mean, it was kind of revolutionary to see magic on TV. I'm sure when it really started doing it, because one of the first rules you read in the old books on magic is never do the same trick twice for the same audience, and never let your audience know ahead of time what you're going to do. And if you do a TV show and it gets repeated, you're violating that. So they kind of brought it up a notch, I suppose, by doing that, because you had to start coming up with more original things. Obviously, before that, magicians could repeat all the same effects, every few years, different ones coming up. So if no one had seen them before or could remember them anyway.
So, do you change over the tricks that you do in your shows on a regular basis, or do you just have a set routine that you...
To a certain extent, it depends upon the audience who I'm playing for and so forth. But I try to learn new things all the time. I think that's necessary and only fair in case same people come back to see you. I mean, the only reason they would want to see the same, at least the way I feel, it's the only reason they want to see the same trick over and over is they want to figure out how it's done. And that's not why I would go to see a magician. If I wanted to learn how it's done, I would, read books on it. So I think a magician has a duty to learn new material, at least occasionally.
I'm constantly torn between wanting to know how it was done and definitely not wanting to know how it was done.
Right. Well, that is a thing, I suppose. Yeah.
What was the first trick you ever learned?
Oddly enough, when I was really young, the things that interested me most were the mentalism tricks, because I could see right away how it really freaked people out to think that you could read their mind. So I really liked the thing where you could, appear to guess what number they'd written down and things like that. So the mentalism tricks really were the thing that first really interested me. But I did some of the sleight of hand and so forth too. When it really comes down to it, the thing that really freaks people out is the mentalism tricks.
I would agree with that. It's creepy. Probably a good thing people don't know what I'm thinking most of the time.
Well, judging from your Facebook post, I think we know what you're thinking of most of the time, Todd.
Oh, boy.
We know that you were interested in magic from an early age. What is it about being a magician that keeps you going? What is it that you get from doing magic in front of an audience?
The thing that's really made magic in many ways the center of everything that I do is that, oddly enough, being an illusionist keeps me grounded so far as my other interests go, like the paranormal and so forth, because I can remember that it is, in a way, everything can be that seems unusual could be an illusion. It just keeps me focused in remembering that, I think.
It's interesting that you brought up, you just mentioned that. Was it your experience and background in magic that then led you into your work in the paranormal?
To a certain extent. The paranormal has been another pretty much lifelong interest of mine. I'm talking about going back long before the current type of paranormal investigating that we see on the various so-called reality TV shows now, going back, way back. I can remember when what would now be called paranormal TV was the show In Search of with Leonard Nimoy.
Right.
Which was something I saw when I was very young and was a big influence on me, and it was quite a different presentation of the whole thing. In the first place, I think they were much more ready to say that this was speculation, and they had people on there with different viewpoints and so forth. So I think that kind of grounded me as far as the paranormal goes, more so than many of the people I think growing up now seeing paranormal shows which basically show one person's interpretation and viewpoint of whatever they apparently uncover.
Yeah. Oh, I loved that show growing up. In Search of. That was one of those must-see TV shows for me as a kid. Absolutely loved it.
I remember seeing it then, and I feel like I literally spent the rest of my life waiting for the DVD set to come out. And finally, about 2 years ago, DVD box set of In Search Of came out, and I was probably one of the first people to order it.
Yeah. Well, thanks to YouTube, I can watch it on YouTube every once in a while when I get the urge. But
Right.
I didn't know it came out on DVD. I'm going to have to pick that up.
They finally brought it out. Yeah.
You know, one of the things that people ask me as a horror writer where my inspiration came from, and I have to tell them, you know, it all starts with my mother, who had books from Hans Holzer, who, you know, one of the great
sure.
paranormal investigators of his time. She had several books of his, and you know, reading those really they creeped me out, because I think he really was kind of a believer, and I think rather than, you know, debunking, he was really looking for proof.
He was. I think unlike many of the investigators now, though, I don't think he would have insisted that other people believe in it. I remember reading his stuff, and I always respected his viewpoints. I thought he had some very interesting ideas. I'm not a believer myself. I don't consider myself a skeptic. I'm willing to believe, but I haven't seen the evidence that allows me to make that leap of faith towards believing that ghosts exist. But yes, I was influenced by Hans Holzer's writings as well, sure.
Speaking of, you just used the phrase leap of faith, and I think in a lot of ways belief in the paranormal is, you know, faith, sort of a faith-based thing. Say that 3 times fast. My mother-in-law, for example, believes in anything, like anything that happens. She believes there's a paranormal connection. And while today we live in an era of amazing scientific achievement, it's more and more people believe in the paranormal and are very quick to latch on to psychics and mediums and everything. Why do you suppose that is?
I would suppose they're just desperately looking for vindication for their personal beliefs. The same reason people will latch on to supposed paranormal phenomenon, the same reason so many people believe in so-called scientific creationism or intelligent design, that sort of thing. And I'm not saying anything against anyone's faith or religious beliefs. I mean, that's fine. But as far as claiming there's scientific evidence for it, that kind of goes against the very meaning of the word faith, as far as I'm concerned. I don't really see the point in saying you have faith and then saying that you need or have found scientific evidence that supports it. That really is a contradiction, really. But in both cases, both in the paranormal, which has become a religion pretty much for many people, and then people believing things like so-called scientific creationism, even though many of the greatest theologians of all times, including several popes, for instance, have said that the things, for instance, in the book of Genesis, the creation account, are meant to be taken as symbolic things of faith and not a scientific explanation of how the universe began.
I also think, to a certain extent, people who are looking for any sign of ghosts or whatever, I think a lot of it has to do with the fear of dying and wanting to know that there's actually something on the other side, quote unquote, and not that once we finally pass on that that's it. I think they want to know that there's something else after that.
I would say that is the case. Yes, people are afraid of death and want to think in a way it really isn't the end until you've actually done it. You can't say for sure. So I don't really see the reason. And once again, as I said, making that leap of faith and saying that just because some phenomenon happens that I can't for the moment explain, that doesn't prove the theory that there are ghosts or survival after death, or that those who have died can communicate with the living. I think that's the thing that really gets me the most, people wanting desperately to believe in the communication with the dead. I mean, why? Even if you want to desperately believe in life after death, sure, it's possible. But why do you have to make that leap towards believing that there's continued communication? And that's both the explanation for the one-time popularity of spiritualism as a religion, with psychic mediums and seances and so forth, and now the modern equivalent of that is belief in the paranormal, the as seen on TV paranormal.
And then you have people like John Edwards and and a couple others who think that who talk to the dead.
John Edwards is doing an act that any magician will recognize in a snap. I mean, it's a classic mentalism act. Have as large an audience as you can get, and someone out there is thinking of and say it, and someone will say, "Wow, how did you know that?" I mean, that's all John Edwards is doing, and he's as far as a performer goes, he's great at it. And people who believe that as a literal thing are far too gullible. If he actually believes it, and I don't think he does, if he actually believes it, then we have a problem.
We will return to your scheduled programming shortly, or we are currently experiencing technical difficulties.
Undoubtedly, there will be people listening to this show who, if they hear that we had any technical problems at all, will say, "See, he shouldn't have said those things against the paranormal."
My grandmother would have said that, definitely. She was a big believer, as far as I know. Oh.
One thing I always bring up, I have so many discussions and debates about this. I could talk to you guys for days. I'm so into this stuff. People constantly minimize the significance of coincidence. Someone's thinking about someone's thinking about their dead father, and a picture falls off the wall, and right away they think, "Oh my God, my dad is trying to communicate with me." No, it was a coincidence. I hate to tell you.
Right. I remember. I've forgotten exactly what the odds or statistics are, but just to show how common coincidence is, if you just randomly ask people what their birthday is, you'll be amazed at just how few people you have to ask before you hear the same dates over and over. And those people would be amazed if they ask 100 people a day what their birthday was, and they had 10 or 12 of them with the same day of the year. But really, it's it wouldn't take that many in order to get that.
Well, you're so right, and yet coincidence, I think, is what leads most people to believe in the paranormal. You know, someone will say, "Oh, I was thinking about my friend today. The phone rang, and it was him." Okay, how many times did you think about your friend and the phone didn't ring?
Right, right.
You only remember the one time that it happened to occur.
And if he's a friend, of course he's going to call eventually. Now, Daniel, do you go out on actively investigate like haunted houses and things like that?
I have from time to time. I don't go to places where I haven't been invited. I don't go to tourist spots or famous haunted places and pretend to be an investigator. If I go to a famous historical landmark, I go as a tourist like anyone else. I don't then, as some paranormal groups do, they'll go on the local tours of historical spot that's supposed to be haunted, and they'll take some pictures of themselves standing around in there, and they'll put it on their website, and they'll say, whatever, paranormal investigators, we investigated the famous haunting of whatever. But I don't do that. But if someone contacts me and says they have something, and it sounds like something interesting, I'll go to that. I try to avoid the ones who contact me who obviously are just looking for thrills, and it's pretty easy to tell them because they end up just repeating the terminology that they've heard on TV shows like Ghost Hunters or Ghost Adventures, and they'll say, and we have, I think that it's more than a residual haunting because we have a full body apparition, and I'm sure you will get some EVPs, and you should bring your EMF detector, that sort of thing. So I can tell right away if they're just looking to have a little seen on TV experience, and I basically try to avoid that sort of thing.
Yeah, because most people wouldn't know that terminology to begin with.
My favorite is the Facebook one. People will post a picture of like a creepy house or building and say, "Would you spend a night here for $10,000?" Yes, pay up, sign me up, and I'll do it.
Now, I remember just a short while ago when we had the riots in Baltimore. There was a drugstore that was set on fire, and soon after that happened, I saw some paranormal group posting a photograph online of a cloud of smoke that kind of vaguely looks like a human figure with glowing eyes. And they claimed this was in Baltimore. This was when the store was on fire during the riots a few weeks ago. The thing is, I know that same photograph, that exact same photograph, had been posted previously claiming that it was smoke from an active volcano. It was exactly the same photograph.
Those are fun, too. People post a picture. Oh, it looks like a demon in the smoke. I'm like, yeah, when we were kids, we used to see bunnies in the clouds, too.
Yeah, sure. And that's a natural thing of the human mind to try to make identifiable patterns out of chaos. The same thing as listening to white noise and trying to hear voices or whatever in it. It's exactly the same thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hear voices, but that's because I'm not taking my medication at the time. So, I mean, big surprise. Yeah. I also remember, speaking about the pictures, there was one of the Twin Towers from 9/11, and they were trying to say that you could see the face of a demon in this cloud of smoke coming up from the tower that had been destroyed. And I got so angry about that because it's one thing to manipulate a photo like you were talking about with the one in Maryland, and it's quite another to use something, a tragedy to try and get your point across.
It is. It's ridiculous. I don't think they. Well, the thing is, you have to figure out why they're doing it. Some of these people are just looking for attention. Some of them may seriously believe. Some of them have gotten the photograph from someone else who faked it and are honestly passing it on, thinking that it's real. Others, as you said, are just seeing something that's not there. So, there are all kinds of things.
Let's talk about, you are the president of the Dracula Fan Club of Maryland.
Right. The Dracula Society of Maryland.
Dracula Society of Maryland, excuse me. How did you get that position?
Well, the Dracula Society of Maryland was founded back in the 1970s by a gentleman named Thomas Schellenberger, who founded it as a local branch of the original Count Dracula Society, which was founded about a decade earlier by a man named Donald Reed in California. And the Dracula Society is a nonprofit organization dedicated to the serious study of horror films and goth literature. And when I was 8 years old, one of the local libraries was showing the film Taste the Blood of Dracula, which is one of the classic Hammer horror films. And
Sure.
I went to see that, and it was being shown by the Dracula Society. And after the film, the president presented about what the Dracula Society was as a horror film and literature fan club, and I joined then when I was 8 years old, and I've been with it ever since. And many years after that, I became the president. The original founder actually moved to New Orleans and started another group there called Dracula and Company. So I became the head of the Maryland Society and have been so ever since. So basically that's how that happened.
What are those lodge meetings like, I wonder? That wasn't nearly as funny as I thought it was, I guess.
Welcome to my world.
Okay, then.
So I'm going to make
I got nothing.
It's been one of those days. Okay. I'm going to assume that Gothic literature and more towards the older horror movies are what you're more interested in than, say, some of the more current fare?
Yes, the really classic films mostly. The Universal horror films from the 30s and 40s, and the Hammer horror films from the 50s and 60s, I really think are the top of presenting horror as it should be. I enjoy some of the later, the more blood and guts slasher films as well. I like some of those, but I really prefer the more, given a choice, the more atmospheric, classic, gothic horror type things in both film and literature.
Do you have a favorite?
As far as the films go, I really like the Hammer horror films, and going back even earlier than the Universal films, I'm really into the silent horror films, like Nosferatu, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, the German expressionist horror films. I think really some of the earliest things we got it right as far as how to present horror. So I would say just all of those in general, the more atmospheric horror films.
Yeah, I picked up the 2-disc set of The Mummy, the old Boris Karloff Mummy, and
All right, sure.
The Mummy for me, up until I had seen it, and I hate to admit this, but I'd never seen The Mummy up until I got this DVD. The Mummy to me had always been one of those monsters that never seemed to really instill fear in me, because I mean, I'm not athletic, but I'm pretty sure I could outrun a mummy.
Right.
Yeah, but when I watched that movie, it was very, very creepy. It kept me up for a little bit with the lights on, because they did a fantastic job, not only with Karloff's makeup, for the mummy, but the way that it was filmed with the shadows and the music. It was so well done. I couldn't imagine a movie being that well done today.
No, it's just, well, the Mummy in particular is something they really did right the first time, and then as it went on and on with the series, they took some of the atmosphere away, and it was just the monster with the one arm. He has one his other arm's broken, and has the one limp leg. But as you said, somehow no one can outrun him. You see, the first one made it clear that it was ancient Egyptian black magic and everything, and all these mystical elements, and that's what made him so dangerous. But later on, it was just a barely animated corpse, and it as it gradually atmosphere out, it wasn't as scary in the long run, right?
I don't know if you heard, but they're going to be remaking all of the Universal monster movies.
I had heard of it. It's both an interesting idea, but something I'm worried about. I just really doubt if they're going to do it right, but they really could. I really think if they would make a real gothic horror film that at least somewhat takes itself seriously, it could be fun. It should be fun, but it takes it internally. As far as the performances go, it should take itself seriously. I think it would be a tremendous hit with young people today, because they have been conditioned for it, but then it's not there. They've been conditioned for it by growing up with Harry Potter, Twilight, things like that, which took these ideas and presented them in more acceptable ways for children and teenagers to watch. But they've been exposed to these concepts, magic, sorcery, vampires, and everything, but they haven't seen it presented, at least modern film, in the classic gothic horror way. And I think if someone had the nerve to make a film like that, I think it could really be a huge hit. But I fear that they're just not going to do it. I think
the sad reality is that Hollywood today is too scared to take a chance on something like that.
That is unfortunately the case. I wish even that more independent film producers would do it. I know some independent film producers myself, and unfortunately, all they seem interested in doing are slasher films, found footage, horror films, and horror comedies. Now, I have nothing against any of those genres, but I think an independent film producer is in a perfect position to do classic Gothic type horror film. And to see how they could do that, they need to look no further than the early Hammer films. Now, Hammer Films was a very low budget studio, but they did it right. They got good actors, and they got a good script. They didn't overspend on the special effects. They did what they could, and they made good films. And just about any independent producer, if they were willing to do that, could, I think, do something really revolutionary with a Gothic horror film. But they just don't seem interested in trying it.
I think even to an extent, Roger Corman did that with some of the Poe movies that he made.
Right. That's another great example, sure. Like, I know an independent producer, I won't mention any names, but this is someone that I know who openly says in his last film that he got all of the actors to work for free and then paid a special effects crew. Now, special effects crews should get paid, but so should actors. I think that was exactly backwards from if he wanted to make an effective film, get the best actors you can. It's even in a way insulting to the special effects crew to have them work themselves to death to do good special effects and then have actors who can't sell it. If you have a really incredibly well done, frightening special effect, and then the actor doesn't react to it right, then it's worthless.
True.
Because ultimately the audience is going to laugh.
And I would think with
they may jump, they may be scared for a minute, but then they're going to laugh.
I would think with the success of Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, many years, well, not many, but a few years ago.
Sure.
That was probably as close to a classic Gothic horror as you could get, and that did very well.
That was a very good film, yes. But oddly, it's odd to see something do so well and then not be imitated all the time. It just didn't happen.
Well, because we stumbled into the torture porn and found footage era, where Hollywood can make films cheaply and make a profit. I agree with you. I love that film. I love Bram Stoker's Dracula by Coppola. Great film.
Maybe we're just the exceptions to the rule, do you think? And maybe it just seems like the general public are just stooges?
I don't really think so. I think they just haven't had it really seriously presented to them. As I said, I think like if Universal remade their classic horror films as serious films, I think it could be a big hit. I think it will be a bigger hit than it will be otherwise if they make them as... there are all kinds of rumors that they're just going to make them turn them into similar to the current Disney Marvel films, which are fine, but they're comic book films. It's a different genre entirely. And they're trying to emulate that. I don't think they'll be nearly as big of a hit as they would be otherwise if they would really make them for what they should be.
Well, I think we're going to start to wrap this up. Todd, do you have any last questions?
I do. Just going back just real quick to touch back on the magic. What are some current magicians working today that you admire or appreciate?
Basically, enjoy all magicians that I see. I like Chris Angel. He does some good stuff. There's a guy called Dan Sperry who's getting a lot of attention now, and he has he calls himself a shock illusionist and does a lot of horror type things in his act. There are quite a lot of them. So I would just say in general, I think magic is pretty healthy. I think that TV and video have caused magicians to finally have to come up with different ways to present themselves. So I think it's a pretty healthy field right now.
Fantastic. There's a guy from England named Troy, who I am convinced has actual wizard powers. So if you're not familiar with him, check him out.
I'll do that, sure.
All right, thank you.
Daniel, what do you have coming up? Do you have any show dates coming up in the near future that we can plug for you?
I'm basically doing private parties and so forth. And the big thing I'm talking about doing, I know we talked about debunking the paranormal and so forth, but it's kind of become a tradition on Halloween for magicians and psychic mediums to call a truce and do a seance together. And I really want, not this coming Halloween, but Halloween of 2016 is the 90th anniversary of the death of Harry Houdini. So I want to find the best venue I can get and someone who claims to be a psychic medium and do the classic Houdini seance and attempt to contact the spirit of Harry Houdini, if possible, or if not possible, at least to present a good show, because I do know all of the codes that Houdini left that he's supposed to use if he ever could communicate from beyond the grave. So that's really something I would like to do on Halloween of 2016. Now, I haven't chosen a psychic medium yet, so if any are listening to this show who want to try out, that's something they can contact me about.
Well, and we'll have links to your webpage as well as your social media links as well when the show goes up. And Daniel, thanks for taking time and talking with us. I really appreciated it. It was very enjoyable, in spite of some of the hiccups in the recording.
We'll forgive that, Scott.
Oh, well, thanks for having me on the show. It was nice talking to you.
Likewise.
Okay.
Thanks, Dan.
You can also subscribe to the Imaginarium on iTunes, as well as rate and leave us a review. And if you enjoy the show, check out our other podcasts on the Supernauts Network at thesupernauts.com, including Jailbait, my newest venture with the one and only Wade Radford. And until next time, may all your journeys be filled with pure imagination.